that they had in the region. And then my dad, of course, went on to serve as resident representative for the United Nations Development Program in Jamaica. And so he was always very, very interested in development issues, in politics. And my dad is the one really that would see me sitting down and would throw a Time magazine or a Newsweek magazine or some Caribbean weekly and say, hey, why not have a read of this? And would also engage me in discussions on what was happening in the region. I am extremely lucky because of his work and his position in Jamaica especially. A lot of Caribbean leaders came through our home and would be coming over for dinner, and my parents would always insist, and my other mother, Auntie Marianne, would always insist that we would come out and we would have to meet these could be prime ministers, and we'd have to meet them and engage them, and they would ask us questions. And I think in retrospect that all of that gave me the foundation to be very, very comfortable with people of all stratas, of all countries, of all areas. And so, it was normal to have diplomats from different countries coming over for dinner. And, the evening would start with myself and Melina and Tracy helping Auntie Marianne in the kitchen, preparing the food or whatever, and then coming out and saying hi and discreetly exiting. So I think I am blessed to have been able to take a bit of both of them. One of my flaws is that, and I have a few, is that I'm very impatient. And I don't know, I don't think I get that from my dad. Definitely not dad, but maybe a bit of my mom.
Well, two mothers, two amazing women, and you have met some other amazing women. Who are some women you admired as a child growing up?
Last year we lost Miss Ado, who was a teacher at St. Rose's High School. And Miss Ado, starting off with teachers, Miss Ado was a real role model for me. Imagine St. Rose's, which started off when we first went to the school as a girls' school. It was the convent. And, our experiences were always very strong commitment to the church, a religious background, and very, very conservative in, the early 1970, it would have been 1975. And Miss Ado at the time was just totally out of the box as far as students thought, She would wear these long skirts and these African headdresses and head wraps, and she was extremely vocal. She, in fact, tutored me and encouraged me to do a lot of verse speaking in the Guy Expo competitions and also to do a lot of debating. So as a student in high school, Miss Ado was definitely a very, very strong role model to me. Sister Hazel Campaign was also a very strong woman who I totally admired, and we've had a fantastic relationship because, of course, you start off being terrified of your headmistress, especially if she's a nun, and then in time you leave school, you get married, and you develop a relationship, and we now are we kind of touch base with each other for advice on both sides. So it's really a wonderful thing. Other women that inspired me, I have been inspired by women like Shirley Field Ridley, the women that have been in politics in Guyana. I was very fortunate to have a relationship with Janet Jagan. My husband, I even had a stronger friendship with him through the art gallery that we had, Hatfield Foundation. And people may not know this, but Mrs. Jagan always, every time we had an opening of the of an exhibition, she would either come to the opening or she would let Nigel know that she couldn't make the opening for whatever reason, and would come maybe 2 hours before or just after the exhibition had been set up, and would come and wander around the art gallery with Nigel. She was a strong supporter of local artists, and I had the pleasure of meeting her on several occasions. In fact, when we had Sidewalk Cafe, we opened our salad bar 3 months after we opened. It was Mrs. Jagan that came and did the honors of opening it. And so she is a woman that I totally respect, because imagine being in politics in that time, you know. Imagine being a foreigner married to a Guyanese and coming to live in Guyana, leaving her family and playing such a strong role in Guyanese politics. There are several women that have inspired me, including Maya Angelou and her writings. And for me personally, I'm an Oprah girl. There are lots of things that I do in life today that I have been able to shape and learn and mold, and bring a different perspective. And some of that I credit to Oprah. I think those would be the main women in my life.
You love Guyana. Your love for Guyana is unchallenged, Kathy. If you were to visit your favorite place in Guyana and sit down to read a book, sip your favorite drink, and listen to some music, where would this place be? What will you be reading? What will you be drinking? And what music will you be listening to?
Okay. All right. If I were choosing a place, I
Yeah.
would be at sunset, and I would be on the Essequibo River.
Mm.
I would more than likely be, and I'm gonna say it, I would more than likely be, if I could choose anywhere, I'd be sitting on the beach at Baganara Island Resort
I love
in the
that place.
Essequibo, watching the sun go down. What would I be drinking? I would probably be drinking a gin and tonic. That sounds strange, but recently, before, I would say 4 years ago, it would have been a rum and coconut water, a 10-year-old and coconut water. But recently, I found I get migraine headaches from rum. So it would be a gin or some fruit juice. And what would I be listening to? I would possibly be listening to Keith Way, or I would be listening to Spyro Gyra, which is kind of jazz, or I could be listening to Luther Vandross. I could be a range of different people that I would be listening to. I have a very eclectic uh, array of music that I love. It could be any one of several people.
And what book will you be reading?
What book would I be reading?
Or what
I
will
probably, I'm on a journey right now to rediscover some of Martin Carter's work. Um, my husband Nigel was very fortunate in that at Saints they did Martin Carter. I think we had a disadvantage because we really did not do enough Caribbean writers when I was in St. Rose's. Um, and so for me, after I left school and was at university, that's when I started to really catch up. And today, because of the politics, I have been looking back at some of his writings and reflecting in some ways, unfortunately, that it's still so applicable today, you know? A poet that started writing from the 60s right through, and some of the issues are exactly the same. Some of the challenges, some of the fights are currently the same. So I would probably be trying to catch up on some Martin Carter.
Kathy, I am just curious about this. Describe for us what it was like on your first official day in Parliament, and what surprised you the most about Parliament?
The first day was really, it was an awesome day. It was the best and also a bit of the worst of the days when I reflect on it. The day I went into Parliament was the day that my dad and I lost my dad and my mom within 3 months of each other. And my dad, in fact, lived two doors away from me. So we were extremely close. And he was really my guide and my inspiration for getting into politics. Dad used to say every time I would want to give up, Dad would say, no, 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 you got to keep going. You know, you can't, somebody's got to start doing and making a change. So you go out there and see what you can do. Don't look at what you haven't achieved. Just go bit by bit and, you know, maybe you'll make a difference. But you don't want to look back on your life and say, I should have tried. So on the day I went into Parliament, my dad and my other mother, Auntie Marianne, actually returned to Guyana from chemo treatment in New York. And I know that the intention was that they wanted to be there in the Parliament as I took the oath. But unfortunately, Dad was really just not strong enough, and they had arrived in Guyana at 8 o'clock in the morning, having been at the airport, you know, from midnight, a midnight flight. So my dad was not there. Um, my mom was there. It was a very nerve-wracking experience, but very encouraging because, you know, you walk into Parliament, and I was surprised at the amount of women. I remember lots of women that I know from various organizations I was part of were standing outside, and you know, they gave me this big fancy briefcase, and so I was walking with this briefcase in my fancy suit, and when I saw these a range of different women that are friends, you know, that had been part of WAVE, Women Against Violence, that had been part of Guyana's First, and they were just all standing behind the barriers, and it was the best moment because I stopped and I was able to gaff with them, and it made it seem like, yeah, this is why you're going to do this. Strangely enough, I had never thought about going into Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, within the AFC, we had lost Sheila Holder just before our election in 2011. Sorry, and Sheila Holder is also another one of my mentors in the political field. And Sheila really was the one who was in Parliament. Sheila allowed me to be just behind the scenes and to support her, but I had never really thought about going out there and being in the front. That is because when you make a choice to be involved in politics in Ghana, you know that it's going to affect your business. You know that, you know, the gutter press is going to be attacking you for all the wrong reasons. You know, I've had articles talking about my hair and what I wore and not necessarily what I spoke about, which can be very, very distressing. So, you know, it was kind of a daunting experience, but it really was a wonderful experience also. And my biggest regret was that some of the negotiations, some of the dialogue, some of the camaraderie that I had with other members of parliament on both sides of the political fence, on the opposition and also the government side, because most of these people I knew and had encounters with before and respected. I had hoped that we would have been able in the parliament itself to put aside differences and to work together. And so I was very disappointed that the agendas, the political agendas, are so deeply carved in stone. And, you know, some of the animosity that takes place within the parliament. And yet what people don't know is that as soon as you come outside and you go into the dining room, it's, hi, how are you? You know, how are things? How's the family? That kind of engagement. And yet the public doesn't get an opportunity to see that. So it always tends to appear to be so much more contentious.
If you were in a position to change one thing in Parliament, what would that be?
I would like to be able to, I probably would get rid of the recall legislation. Mm-hmm. And I would like to create an environment where parliamentarians could be more to their own personal views, their own personal commitments, beliefs. I would try to change the fact that everything seems to be on a party line. You have to, a lot of the time, you can deviate, and in your speeches, you can give your perspective. But at the end of the day, when it comes to voting, we're in this rigid system where you've got to vote your party line, whether sometimes you necessarily agree with it or not.
Oh.
And therefore, if I could, I think that would be one thing that I would change. I would give parliamentarians the independence to exercise their own views and their own thoughts.
In the chat room, Lourdes Ferguson said, "Hi, Cathy. You have been able to receive from many phenomenal women. How are you paying it forward, so to speak?"
Hi, Laudette. I know Laudette. How am I paying it forward? Well, just before I dashed here to do this interview, and I was coming from Haslington, which is on the East Coast, and there was a political meeting there that I was speaking at. And what I've tried to do in my life, in my small ways, is to try and be an active and staunch supporter of some of the women that are very, very crucial to Guyanese society. So, for example, I try to pay it forward by there's several organizations and community groups that I go to, even out of the campaign environment. I go to several organizations and I speak to women. I have done guest lectures, I've done workshops, I've done things about job hunting skills, about getting involved in community groups, about speaking up and speaking out. I am very involved in dealing with some community issues. Today I had a woman who came to me, and I'm going to help her to raise funds she has a daughter who has a brain tumor, and the MRI, believe it or not, costs $75,000, which is totally out of her reach. And so I try to pay it forward by helping individuals in addition to communities in whatever way I can. So it's the norm to have a range of different women dealing with all kinds of situations coming to my office at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I try to make the time to sit and to talk with them. Sometimes all I can do is offer them hope. Sometimes all I can do is offer them a listening ear. And sometimes I am able to use my influence and my voice. I've done telethons where in 3 hours we have raised $2 million for a medical procedure. And so I try to pay it forward in those ways.
There are more questions in the chat room I'm going to ask before we
Sure.
take a quick break. Philip
Sure.
has said, "Hi, Cathy. As a parliamentarian, I sensed your passion and frustration in a recent street interview on Courtney's murder. Since I knew him personally, I was very touched by your empathy," is a statement. And Melina said, "What would you say to the voters who are currently undecided?"
I would say to the voters that are undecided that, today we have the power to change things. As you know, the AFC laid on the table this no confidence motion. And come May 11th, each of us as individuals will be able to go into that booth and will be able to make a choice. That choice is going to determine whether we go with more of what we've had for the last 22 years in Guyana, or you have a choice to vote for something that could be different. You have a choice to vote for a change. And so I say to them that you have to exercise that voice. You have to exercise your vote. If we do nothing, if we opt out, if we give up and say, it's not going to change, it's been like this for 20-something years, I would like to say to them that it has started to change. In 2000, prior to 2005, the AFC did not exist. After 2005, the political party that won the presidency, the PPP, no longer had a majority in parliament. And for the first time, we were able to decide and really contribute. We did not have a political system whereby one party made all the decisions, and whether you liked it or not, it went through. So, although we've learned from the 10th Parliament, although the approach was that some of the things that we passed, some of the bills did not get assented to, I think that we've seen the power to make a difference and to change things. So, I would say to anybody that's on the sideline, you have the power. We don't want to fight. We don't want anyone else to lose their life. We don't want to go, the ballot is more powerful than any bullet. And that's why I'm saying that Courtney Ewing died for and speaking about the importance of voting. And I say to people, we honor them and we honor our ancestors that gave blood for this right to vote. And we have to go and vote. If you don't vote, then you have no right to criticize. You have no right to say anything about anything that's wrong in Guyana because you have given up your right to participate in the process. I think that's what I would say.
Well said. Let's take a break.
Thank you.